Hello and welcome to the first module of this semester. This module is a nice way to start the semester because it really works with the nature of literacy and some of that foundational information that you need in order to move forward in this course. Some of the information in this chapter may be a review for you, and some of it may be new. But what I'd like you to do is you go through this whole chapter, and this module is really to think of this content in terms of literacy. Some of this content you may have heard about in teaching in general, but here I want you to apply it specifically to literacy in the reading classroom. So I'd like to go ahead and go into our module folder. So if you want to go along with me, you can open that up on your own computer. But you'll see in each of the module folders that you have the learner objectives and a brief chapter overview. I'm trying to give you some brief information. You'll see here also that I will be holding some virtual office hours this week, so that if you have any questions, definitely pop into Blackboard Collaborate at that link during those times. If those times don't work for you, just reach out to me and let me know, and we can set up another time. I want to take a minute to talk about a few of the topics that are covered in this chapter. You'll notice that at the beginning of every chapter there is a chance to activate your background knowledge. There is both an anticipation guide and a section called Using What You Know. And so you can see that right at the beginning of the chapter. I strongly encourage you to do this at the beginning. It's one of the first things that you do in that module. So you can really see what kind of background knowledge you have about the content, as well as maybe what some of your assumptions are about teaching literacy or about the specific content covered in that chapter. So definitely take some time to do that at the beginning. There are 5 main sections of this chapter. First, the author will go through some different theories of literacy learning. These theories should look familiar to you from some of your previous coursework, so it should act as a good review. But again, I would like you to look at those theories from the lens of a literacy educator. Throughout this semester, you will be building your philosophy of teaching literacy statement. So think about these philosophies and which one you align with in terms of your practice. And then you can formulate your beliefs about reading and writing instruction throughout the semester based on that philosophy. Okay. It is important to note that the text the author does come from the integrated approach. So you'll see a lot of examples from that integrated approach, but he is good about bringing in other approaches as well and other philosophies throughout his examples in the text. The second major section talks about literacy initiatives and provides a good history of reform movements in terms of literacy, and so different policies and acts and changes in that arena that will help you develop your knowledge and your philosophy of teaching literacy. The third section moves into the role of language and culture on literacy learning. And in this section, it provides a good introduction to that cultural aspect and the diverse students that you will have in your classroom. And that the author will certainly build upon that throughout the next few chapters and really throughout the whole text. But the key point that I want you to glean from this section is that the acquisition of language and the process of reading itself are 2 separate steps. Students cannot learn to read in a language unless they have actually acquired that language. And so certainly reading more will help you to acquire more language, but you have to have that initial acquisition. And so the author does a nice job laying that thought out. So really pay some special attention to that. Then the last 2 sections go into the basic principles of teaching reading. So you have some principles that the whole text are grounded on, and certainly you'll see those come through in the different activities that you participate in. And then the last part is qualities of highly effective teachers. And again, the text will come back to these again and again, but it's a good warm-up for the semester and a good way to start really coming from that angle of literacy. So as you look through these assignments, I'll scroll down a little bit here for you. I've laid out exactly what you need to do over the course of this week, Everything is due by 11:59 on Sunday, May 21st. You may not turn anything in late. Everything must be in by the due date. So make sure that you plan accordingly. If you haven't already, watch the introduction to the course video. Okay. Your second part is to post in the class introduction forum in the discussion board, and you'll see the link right here. There are clear directions in the discussion board as to how to do that and what content you need to put in there. Each module will have a discussion board post. This one is probably your easiest one over the course of the semester. You get to talk about yourself, which is always nice, but it's not as much content related as the other 9 will be. So for each discussion board forum, you'll need to provide an initial post and then 2 replies to your classmates. If you're having difficulty with inserting a photo, which is one of the requirements of this forum, I've provided a resource, a video tutorial here for you. Okay. Then complete the anticipation, then review the Project 1 template so you have an idea of what to expect. It's really important that at the beginning of each module you go ahead and look at that template and look at the different activities that you will be doing so that you'll have an idea of how to map out your schedule and plan best. And I'll come back to that project in a second. Then you can start working through the anticipation guide to activate your background knowledge. You have both the PowerPoint and the chapter to work through. I do provide the PowerPoint as an extra resource for you. And many students do like looking at that PowerPoint as they read through the chapter and they take their notes on the PowerPoint, and that is perfectly fine. But that will get some of the basics down for you to work with. Not all of the information, of course, but some of the good basics. There is a Chapter 1 study guide activity. You do not need to turn this in, but it is good practice in looking at the difference between the top-down, bottom-up, and interactionist approaches. So you can work through that. Then after that, you can review the anticipation guide to see if any of your views have changed over the course of the chapter. Then you have your Chapter 1 quiz, and then Project 1. I do strongly encourage you to complete the quiz before you get into the project, because this will give you some good feedback. As soon as you submit your quiz, you will then receive your feedback on it. So you can use that formatively as you work through your project. I wanted to go ahead and show you the Project 1 template. I won't do this every module, but since it's the first one, I would like to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the project template. It's coming up in just a second. Here we go. Okay, so as you can see, I'm sorry, it's kind of on the smaller side, but you can see that I've broken it down into different activities. This particular project has 4. The first activity will always be working with vocabulary, and we'll look at some different ways of exploring vocabulary. However, as this course is one of those important courses that build that vocabulary knowledge and that content knowledge before some of your big assessments to go into teaching, that is a requirement of this course, is to go through this vocabulary in this depth. So you'll see in this particular module, you've got a grid to fill out with your terms, put in your definition, and then that third column has you start to apply some of that knowledge. Certainly those definitions may be from the textbook, okay, but then that third column should certainly be in your own words as you work through that concept. Okay, I've given you a couple examples to work through here, and then you can just fill out the information as you go through the rest of those terms. Okay, they should all be found in the textbook. You can certainly pull additional resources should you need to. The second activity the second and third activity actually have you start looking at being a culturally responsive teacher and looking at how having a diverse set of students in your classroom impacts your decisions of how you teach. So the activity 2 has you look at a couple different blogs and respond to those, and then activity 3 has you watch a video and respond to that. So definitely look through the specific criteria there in terms of what you need to put in your response. Okay, and then this last activity talks about those traits of highly effective teachers and those principles of teaching reading. So what I've done is I've given you a handful of different sites to look at with different characteristics of highly effective teaching, and you're looking at some of those overlying or underlying themes that are coming across, and so you'll write a response to that. For each of these, you can write your response right in that box. You can just type right in it. If you prefer not to use the box, just delete it and write your response below. But the idea is that you do not need to change the formatting. You can just go ahead and put your information right in. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and go back to Blackboard for a second. Here we go. All right. So what you'll do is you'll just submit it right there. Okay. Follow that. Look at the rubric. When you go to submit your project, there is always, in fact, I can open it up right now for you. There is always a place right here where you can click on this and see the rubric. This is the same rubric that I used to grade. I mentioned it in the introduction to the course video. But definitely look at this before it's right at the moment when you have to submit it. I would look at this really as you get going. It should align with all the directions on your it should align with all your directions on your template, but that will help you to see where that will help you to see some of the criteria that I'm looking at in terms of grading. Okay, all right, let me come back to this. All right, I think I've touched on all of those. Okay, if you have questions as you work through Module 1, certainly post to the help forum. Your classmates can respond to that. Maybe they may have some of those same questions that you have. If you're not getting any responses, which hopefully you will quickly because everybody should be checking it regularly, but if you're not getting responses, you can certainly email me. Typically it's a 24-hour response time, sometimes quicker, but when we get into weekends and such, it could be 48 hours over the course of the weekend. So you'll definitely want to reach out in that help form and check it regularly so you can help each other. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, let me know, but enjoy Module 1.